Good morning, Vandal fans, and welcome to another edition of Fourth and Downtown. I'm your host, Josh Grissom. I'm joined with Luis, the Godfather Torres, this Sunday morning, here to talk little Idaho track and field, some spring football results, and then also as well discuss a little bit of the Idaho soccer team's preview of their match today. We'll be cutting our program short, an estimated 15 minutes, so we'll only go for about 45 minutes today as opposed to an hour, but we will still provide you with the latest Vandal coverage, beginning with the football results. On Friday, the Idaho football team hosted its annual Silver and Gold scrimmage game at the Kibbe Dome. That began at 7 p.m., and it was an offensive showcase for the starters. It appeared the way that Idaho head coach Paul Petrino split up the squad was that the starters were on the Silver team, and mainly the backups were on the Gold team, although there was some players who played for both teams. And that translated over to the results as well because Silver took home an 80-10 victory over the Gold team. So for those of you who were there, wasn't all that competitive, but it was a good look at our first team offense and kind of some of the explosive firepower and the weapons that we possess on the team. And Luis, when you see that score 80-10, what does that tell you, especially about the starting squad and maybe perhaps the depth of the team with their backup positions?
I think it's safe to say when you only allow 10 points to score, it shows some sort of promise on defense. That's kind of how I saw it. I saw it with the score, but when you have your starters could be with your backups who may have not had a lot of competitive playing time, the results will show. But the fact that the offense scored that many points, that if I recall, wasn't it shortened because of the score?
Yes, they actually called the game off in the middle of the fourth quarter after the final play, which was a 20-yard touchdown pass from Jake Luton to Ruben Muela. And then after that, they just called the game, and it was 80-10 at that point. But also talking about the defensive side for Silver, only allowing 10 points, they actually had to move the Gold offense into the Silver side of the field, starting oftentimes at the 34-yard line. So they're almost in the red zone, and that's where their points came from during those times when they moved them that much closer to the end zone.
I think it would help. It'll definitely help when you put them near the red zone to kind of, if anything else, to stop them. Because if red zone has always been one of those topics that in football you always want to keep an eye on, because that could make or break a defensive game when you allow that many opportunities to go to the red zone. That's the goal. Try not to get your opponent on the red zone. But the fact that they were testing it in a situation where they're in the red zone, you have to stop them. So I think that's a good way to get the team going. It's kind of a good strategy to get him practice, to get him used to the system, understand that red zones are everything when it comes to stopping your opponent.
Yeah, and just looking at some of these scoring drives, it seemed like Luton found a groove early for the Vandals. I mean, he looked very poised. He looked almost like he had played collegiately on the gridiron for 2 or 3 years. He looked like he had that much experience. And maybe it was because they're facing the team's kind of backup second-string defense. But he did look very confident and calm in there in the pocket. And I know when Gold kind of got their first score, he came right out, and I think it was 4 plays later they scored. I think it was 3 of his passes. So he really upped the tempo for the Silver offense, the first team offense, and really drove the Vandals down the field multiple times again and again and again. And what I was most impressed with is with 38 seconds left, the Silver defense recorded an interception. They were 76 yards from the end zone. And it was a good little look at a 2-minute drill, so to say, for the sophomore quarterback. And he took the Silver offense down the field. I think in 2 plays they recorded 50 yards. And then they almost scored a touchdown if it wasn't for a leaping dive by one of the defensive players in the secondary to tip the ball away from Kalen Hightower. They could have easily scored a touchdown on that drive as well. So I was very impressed by Luton and his ability to pick apart the defense, even though it was a second-string defense. It showed a lot of poise and, I guess, a lot of growth from the young quarterback.
That's one of the things that I look with Luton that really admire that he's willing to take any form of risk or sees an opportunity to score, and he's been playing really well this spring. And like I mentioned multiple times, if you play really well and Luton understands the system quite well, that's one thing that I've noticed that he's picking it up really well. And because there was some sort of fear by some people about the quarterback competition, I think for now, I think what Luton's opportunity he's been getting, he's taking advantage of it in the good use. And I think when it comes down for the future of Vandal football, I think there's no fear There's no fear going forward because if Luton can do really well in any situation, I think, and continues to grow, I think Luton will be a well-established quarterback for the Vandals in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it's great the depth that they have at quarterback right now. With starter Matt Lenahan, obviously showed tremendous talent last year in the Sun Belt Conference. He almost had 3,000 yards through the air. His touchdown to interception ratio wasn't exactly the best in the league, but it did show that he's willing to take some risks, some calculated risks, when he feels like the moment is right. He had a lot of experience on the field, and that's great for the Vandals, but I love the fact that they have a really solid guy in Jake Luton who has seen some time on the field. He's played against Auburn out of any opponent to play early in your career. That's a tough one, but he also faced Arkansas State, the eventual Sun Belt champions, and he had some pretty good games as far as that is concerned, both through the air and with his legs. So I'm really impressed by the fact that Idaho has a good backup quarterback, which is something that a lot of collegiate programs can't afford. There's a huge drop-off from one guy to the other, but I don't think there's going to be that much of a drop-off between these two guys.
No, I don't think so. And the fact that Luton did got some playing time and on multiple occasions last season, I think it helped. And I think him playing against Southern California and last season, let's not forget, Luton did get some playing time quite a bit. He did all right for with a competitive team that is USC and historically. And I think, yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I think Luton, that's the thing, when you have certain quarterbacks, look at history back and especially in the SEC, when certain backup quarterbacks had to go to other places to find themselves as an individual. Cam Newton, for example, when he was the backup quarterback for Tim Tebow in Florida, and then he went to Auburn and he found his glorious success there, where he is now, as much to the discretion of the fact that he beat Seattle, but that's another story for another time. But at least we have two good quarterbacks that we can rely on down the stretch in case the worst comes to worst for either one of them.
Yeah, and looking at some of these stats right now, Luton finished 32 of 47 for 591 yards. He did throw one interception, but he averaged 18.5 yards per pass and had a long of 76 yards, finished with 5 touchdowns. In contrast, Gunnar Amos went 18 of 32 for 121 yards. He had an interception. He averaged 6.7 yards through the air. His long was a 23-yard pass, and he had 1 touchdown pass. I believe that was to Onunwar, but I'm not 100% certain on that. And then we had A.J. Wooding come in for one play at quarterback. He went 0 for 1, threw an interception. It was a pick six that I believe DJ Hampton took to the house for the Silver defense. So fantastic performance by Luton. Just looking at his numbers, it's reminiscent of Mike Leach's air raid offense over there at Washington State, where you throw. But yeah, it was a good day for him and some of the stats that he recorded. But what I think I want to focus on right now is looking at kind of the running back battle, because I think it became a lot more clear after the game Friday. Aaron Duckworth, 13 attempts, 161 yards, including a 30-yard rush. He averaged 12.4 yards on the ground and had 2 touchdowns. Really, I think, showcased the fact that he thinks he should be the number 1 running back for the Vandals in the fall. Brantley didn't have as hot of a day, Denzel Brantley. He did play primarily for the Silver team, which I thought was an indicator that maybe they had him listed at second in the depth chart, but after this game they may take another look at it. He had 8 attempts for 23 yards. He had a long rush of 7. He averaged 2.9 yards on the ground. Meanwhile, Isaiah Saunders had 14 attempts for 72 yards. His long was a 26-yard rush. He averaged 5.1 yards on the ground and recorded 2 touchdowns. Now, if you look at those stats, it's clear Duckworth looked much better than any of the other running backs. 161 yards. He doubled the offensive output of, I believe, everybody else, and that's including the quarterback scrambles and everything as well. Uh, what do you like about Duckworth, and what do you think about Brantley almost looking like he was going to be the number 2 with the depth chart as far as playing for the Silver team, but then having, I guess, kind of a little bit of a slow day?
And the fact that Saunders had a much better performance than Brantley could kind of show you that Duckworth is an efficient running back. The way that he averaged over 12.4 yards per run, I think it kind of tells you that he's really hungry and motivated to be the number 1 running back. And I think this game pretty much almost anything but solidified his chances to be the starting running back going into the season opener against Montana State in a couple of months. I think that's the thing. If he can hold those kind of numbers on a consistent basis, I think we would not be too concerned about the running game like we were a couple months ago without Elijah Penning, which is a huge shoes to fill in for that kind of running back that could likewise may have a fairly possibility of being drafted late in the NFL draft for what I had heard.
What I like about Duckworth is that he does not shy away from contact. I know a lot of players will run kind of east-west, towards the sidelines, but it seemed like he doesn't shy away from that. There's a couple, I know the last scrimmage I covered, he had a huge hit and barreled over some guy in the secondary on his way to, I think it was like a 70-yard touchdown run. But then also in Friday's scrimmage, he had several huge hits that could be heard from the press box, just the pads and the helmets colliding, and he was the one who instigated him. He went looking for the linebacker who was coming his way and lowered his shoulder and essentially lowered the boom. And that's what I like about him is he is kind of Marshawn Lynch-like in the fact that he's not afraid of the contact and of really making a hit, delivering a hit almost as hard as the linebackers are hitting him.
And it makes me wonder if in the past during his high school days he might have played some defense. It would not. I don't know. It sounds like very. It wouldn't surprise me if he had some little defensive play back then. But the way he's not afraid to get contact kind of shows the old school element of the running game. If you go through the center, you can produce, which is kind of like a little bit of a lost form of art these days in college and the NFL. They go find the open gap from the other direction rather than go forward. It's safe to say refreshing to see that a running back that is more than willing to go through the middle and get some yards.
Yes, and I like Brantley early on because of his ability as a receiving option for the Vandals. He has great hands, and you can see that through his high school numbers, but then also watching him during the spring practices and the spring scrimmages, he's able to handle the ball really well as a secondary receiver for the team. But I didn't really see too much from Brantley. He only had 3 catches for 16 yards. And then if you look at his rushing stats, 8 attempts for 23 yards. It's kind of an off day for the redshirt freshman. Obviously, he's still young, so there's all that time to improve. But as far as making a name for yourself young, it looked like he had that opportunity, and he was on his way. Just a little bit of a slow showing during the spring silver and gold game. Now, obviously, you're not going to base everything in the fall off of what you saw in the spring, but I'd have to say it's probably a pretty good indicator of what you're going to enter the fall looking at as far as the roster and the depth chart, and probably not the best time to have a little bit of a slow day for Brantley.
No, not at this point when you have. If you have a game where a lot of people will willing to show up and see how their progress is made, especially when you face the primary starters on one end and you are in the secondary, you want to make yourself notice and be an effective running back, which unfortunately Brantley did not show all that much compared to Saunders, who actually had a more yardage and seemed to be a little bit more consistent when he had the opportunity to run the ball.
Yeah, and next we'll look at some of the the receiving totals, but as a whole, the running backs 47 attempts, 265 yards, long of 30. They averaged as a whole about 5.6 yards on the ground and recorded 4 rushing touchdowns. The majority of the touchdowns were through the air for the Silver Team offense. And, just looking at some of these receiving stats, Kalen Hightower, we talked the other day about him having a little bit of a poor performance in the other spring game where he only had 3 catches for 72 yards, but really it was just 1 catch for 69 yards. He broke out of that little funk. He had 5 catches, 167 yards, a long of 76. He averaged 33.4 yards a catch. He had 2 touchdown receptions. Ruben Wela, 5 catches, 56 yards, a long of 20. He averaged 11.2 yards receiving, and then he also had a touchdown catch. Jacob Sandin also had a pretty good day. 6 receptions, 148 yards, a long of 44. He averaged 24.7 yards receiving, so it was a little bit of a surprise to see that. And then also David Unger, 8 catches, 68 yards, long of 23. He averaged 8.5 yards through the air for the Vandals, recorded a touchdown catch. Now, he's not running the deep routes of these other receivers, but you have to be impressed with the fact that he had that many catches on kind of these short routes and creating some, I guess you could say, maybe second down, a look at like the second down offense, passing offense for the Vandals as far as, just eating up little bits of those chunks of yardage to make it a more manageable third down scenario. I think that's kind of what they were trying to replicate, and it looked like he did a really good job as far as that was concerned.
Yeah. And here's the thing about from last season, when it came to third down situations, they usually had done a pretty nice job, but I think it's always important to get the first down right away rather than going to the third down pressure. But I think that's one of the things that I really was astonished how Idaho did for the most part on third down. And I think having those situations may carry on, but I think getting it in the second down situation and trying to go for the first little by little, or even right away, I think that it kind of will help Idaho in the long run, that they can be a little bit of a threat. It doesn't matter what down they're in, they can utilize any down and go for it. But I think it's always nice to see when they're not in a third down situation where they can produce numbers and move the chains to kind of help the team's offense get on a roll.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about Onunwar. He had 4 catches for 51 yards, a long of 21, averaged 12.8 yards a catch. I think he's going to be a good guy to kind of cycle into the offense as far as certain schemes are concerned. I think really right now it looks like it's going to be Hightower and Wela for the receiving core. You combine those guys with Trent Cowan and also with Deion Watson, and those are your 4 receivers. Deion Watson kind of being a little bit of a tight end / wide receiver combo. Trent Cowan being specifically tight end. I think you'll see Deion Watson line up quite a bit outside for the Vandals, but he could be incorporated into the run game as a tight end as well. So I think those are your 4 guys. And looking at some of these other contributors, I think Onunwar would be next in line. Then probably Unger and maybe Sandin as well. So pretty strong receiving options for the Vandals as a whole, I would say.
Yeah, they have plenty of receivers that they can rely on in certain plays or in certain moments, and I don't think that should be too concerning. Obviously, you want to have your 4 core receivers, and which I think in this game we pretty much have a good idea who's going to be the 4 primary receivers for Linehan and Luton, whoever, but primarily Linehan if he comes back healthy in the fall.
Now, essentially, we can almost look at the Vandal offense and have the starters pinned down for the fall. Obviously, you'll have Matt Linehan in at quarterback for the Vandals, probably Aaron Duckworth in the backfield. Looking at the receiving options, you'll probably see Trent Cowan on the field, primarily at tight end. You'll see Deion Watson line up as a secondary option for the Vandals, and then probably either Hightower or Wela in for the Vandal offense. As far as the offensive line, I don't see anything too much of a change. except for Noah Johnson, the freshman coming in. I think I honestly believe he'll be on the starting line for the Vandals next year. Just talking to Paul Petrino and some of his thoughts, I think on Friday, during the post game interview, we talked with Petrino a little bit about Noah Johnson, and I think he had an excellent quote. He said that Noah Johnson should be going to his senior prom tonight on that day, but instead he's out here with us in the spring, getting better, and he looks fantastic. So I truly believe Noah Johnson will be on the starting offensive line for the Vandals in the season when the season starts. I was surprised by that because I didn't quite think that a true freshman, could come in and immediately contribute to such a huge part of the game, which is the battle in the trenches. It's often overlooked by a number of analysts and sports reporters. But because when you look at an offensive line, when they're doing their job, the rest of the offense looks good. So you heap praise upon the quarterbacks, the running backs. But when the offensive line is not doing their job, you can tell right away. The defense will blitz. There'll be so much pressure, they won't have time to run through their plays. And so these offensive linemen are often the unsung heroes of the game, and that I don't feel that they get the credit they deserve. But when things are bad, they definitely get an earful. And so I think it's fantastic that to have a true freshman come in like Noah Johnson and earn essentially a starting spot for the Vandals. We have yet to see that, but I believe that's what it's looking like. Fantastic for him, and it looks like he will be a huge staple for the program at the position for the next 4 years.
I think it really helps that. I think what really helps. I think on a tweet that I saw a while back that it said that Coach Petrino can see an eye on talent, and he's willing to utilize them to their advantage. And I think one of the things that really I see that Petrino admires about Noah Johnson is that he's willing to sacrifice a couple of things. Like he mentioned about the whole senior prom thing, considering he'll be a true freshman next year. I think that my understanding of the quote implying that he's dedicated, he's ready to go. He's like, I'm not going to wait till everybody else says I have the opportunity to practice in the spring. I'm going to utilize it, and I think that's what I said almost a month ago. The fact that he has this opportunity to practice with the team already will really kind of gain some respect right away. And I think Johnson will be definitely a guy that we would keep an eye on during the fall and see how much progress he makes. As far as the offensive line is concerned, I definitely get your point as far as they don't give much coverage when they're doing really well. I think that really helps because you're trying to get either your quarterback or your running back to get through the field. With these, you have to block the defense from preventing any of that stuff from happening. So I think the offensive line getting some good praise is just sometimes overlooked, to be quite honest, especially when they're the ones that kind of you have to protect. Those are the guys you got to protect your quarterback and your running back to help the offensive game get better.
Yeah, and if you look at some NFL teams like the Seahawks, they struggled a little bit last year in that, and they're going to struggle this year too. And the fact that they don't have a solid offensive line, they're throwing these guys in these positions. They're kind of experimenting, looking for a feel, and you can see how that translates over. Looking at the Seahawks last year, I think they went 3-3 to start the season. They had a difficulty struggling, so that translates all the way to the professional level. It's not just in college football where linemen are such a huge impact for the sport. And if you look at, like the draft right now, the Titans gave away their number one pick because they don't need quarterbacks that are the huge talk in the draft. They need offensive linemen.
Yeah, I was going to say they don't need a quarterback. They got one last year, and they managed to do pretty well, to my surprise.
Yeah, so this position is huge for the sport, and obviously these guys don't get the endorsement deals, the shoe deals, the vitamin water or the Powerade commercials, but they're such a huge component of the game that often get overlooked. But it's great to see Noah Johnson coming in as a freshman, being able to contribute to the Vandal offense. and probably will be starting for the team in the fall. I think it's fantastic.
I think even last year wasn't like a lineman drafted really early, and I can't remember. I think it might have been from Kansas. I'm not sure, but I do remember. I think the last time the lineman was number 1 in the draft would have to be during when Jake Long was drafted. I can't remember if he was offense or defense because I get it confused every now and then. But I think it had to go back to Jake Long as far as a non-quarterback, let alone a lineman, was drafted that high in the draft. But I think it's a wise decision that they want to find those key components because they, like I mentioned, they already have their quarterback. They have Marcus Mariota. They're not too concerned about it. They got what they wanted last year. Now they want to get another element that where we're talking about that gets overlooked.
Yeah. Now, let's focus a little bit on the defense because we've talked about this before. The Vandals appear to be an offense-oriented team first. Defense is kind of trying to catch up to the offense right now, but I think they had some solid performances. Looking at things right now, Tariq Littlejohn had 5 tackles and 2 deflected passes for the defense. Looking at some of these other stats, Jones had 9 tackles. 2 of them were for a loss of 15 yards total. He also had a sack for 13 yards, so it's great to see that from him. Simmons and Green both combined for 14 tackles. Grabsky also had another 7 tackles, including an interception. E. Williams had an interception. He returned it 38 yards, I believe, for the touchdown. And just a lot of some good sacks and tackles for losses from Smith, from Twini Lupiamanu, from Tony Lashley. So it was a pretty solid day for the Silver defense. But you have to keep in mind they were facing essentially a collegiate backup offense as a whole. What's something you feel like the defense needs to address before the fall?
I think if there's one thing they want to address is sealing the deal of victories. I think that's one thing. If your offense has been producing the work, they have pretty much all the win locked up. You gotta have to have the defense be responsible to finish it off and kind of prevent the opposing team from scoring. I think sealing the wins after the offense has been producing your numbers, I think sealing the deal will be one thing that they really need to talk to about because obviously that was the huge detriment of last year that we always go back and mention a lot because I think in football, if the offense are producing numbers, if you're mostly an offensive-oriented team, then at least from the defensive side, you have to have some sort of motivation to stop the other team's offense from scoring and kind of help them out so they don't have to do all the work. Obviously, defense do a lot of the work, but also at the same time, it's always nice to have the other side of the team kind of finish it off, kind of like put the rest of the pieces together so the other side don't do all the work. And I think I think it's safe to say Idaho are an offensive-oriented team. So from a defensive side, I think if they find a way to seal the deal, work together, and stop the opposing team's offense, then the work from both sides, offensive and defensive, for Idaho will be well balanced.
Okay. Now I look to the trenches as far as filling a defensive need for the Vandals. With the Vandals' offense, it's geared towards competing in a shootout. So obviously secondary is going to be big for the Vandals, but like we saw against teams like Appalachian State last year where they just ran all over the Vandals, and that was kind of due to the defensive line. I think that being able to provide a stronger defense, being able to shut down the run specifically, will be key for the Vandals as far as having success against some of the stronger opponents that will look to run against them as opposed to trying to compete with the passing offense. I think that D-line is going to be such a huge component that the Vandals will need to develop for next year if they're going to reach a bowl game. I truly do. Well, we have hit the 11:30 mark. It's time for a quick promo. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Fourth and Downtown on KUOI 89.3 FM Moscow.
Where's John? What's all the excitement? Ricardo! We can't find John. He was heading that way.
Oh no. Check that old refrigerator.
Thanks, Ricardo.
Remember, Never get in anything that could close up and trap you.
Like an old trunk or an abandoned refrigerator. Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe.
Welcome back to Fourth and Downtown. I'm your host, Josh Grissom, and I'm joined with Luis the Godfather Torres. In the final 15 minutes of our program, we're going to talk a little bit about the track and field results for Idaho. Just touch briefly on the men's tennis team. They took on Boise State this weekend, and then we'll also preview a little bit of the soccer game coming up, which is why we are cutting our program a little short today. So, Luis, looking at the track and field results, it looked like they had a pretty successful meet in the Spokane Memorial Open. There was 5 individual wins by the Vandals. Colsey Bates had the discus throw victory with a distance of 42.01 meters. She also had a third place finish in the hammer throw, coming up just short of 49.50 at 49.46 meters. And then she also finished 9th in the shot put at 11.6 meters. Kalila Bass finished out the 400-meter dash with a victory by 1/100th of a second with a season best time of 58.30 seconds. Juan Medina threw a career best 48.12 meters in the discus, taking first by almost a meter and a half. That's fantastic performance from him. Kaiser Gillespie won the 400-meter dash with a season best and Big Sky Championship qualifying mark of 48.98 seconds. And then also Zion Stuffle. Good to see him dominate the 400-meter hurdles with a time of 52.99 seconds. He currently holds the best time in the Big Sky this season at 52.75 seconds. Some other notable Vandals who had some good performances. Mac Baxter had a second place finish in the 400-meter hurdles with a 54.63 seconds. That's almost 2 seconds behind Zion Stuffle. So Stuffle really dominating the field in that event in particular. Victoria Goetz took second in the 100-meter dash at 12.64 seconds. Megan Palesh earned fourth in the 200-meter dash at 26.28 seconds. Wednesday Walton posted a career best time of 1 minute and 3 seconds flat in the 400-meter hurdles. Taylor Fenuyar placed third overall in the javelin with a throw of 39.28 meters. That mark was her best of the season. And then to wrap it all up, Ian Middleton took fourth in the 200-meter dash. His season best time of 22.39 seconds. We had Dusan Jevtic cleared 1.95 meters in the high jump, which for seconds. And then Dustin Hera finished fourth in the same event at 1.9 meters flat. Luis, now the Big Sky Outdoor Championships are coming up in just a couple weeks. What are you seeing from the team so far that you like? What do you think they need to work on heading into the postseason, so to say?
It seems like right now their outdoor program, it seems like that's where they're finding they're hitting their stride, because we have seen a lot of outdoor competitors already qualified, and I think when you already qualified, boys, I think it makes you wonder that how indeed it is different when you compete indoor and outdoors from the track's perspective. And I think they have established themselves to be a well-competitive track team. I think if they find a little bit more of a gap and push it a tad bit harder, as far as for a couple of them to get a little bit more out of their performance, kind of like high finishes, or even a little bit more quicker times, that would be the only minor nitpick that I would have. But other than that, they have just been an astonishing outdoor program that kind of shows you that they're finding ways to hit their stride as the season progresses. But from a field aspect, we're talking about two different things, because in most instances, sometimes you have to play on floor surface on field, while outdoors you have a lot more grass and dirt and all of that. So I think some of those things can factor in, and I think the way they're adapting have been pretty good. And then and seeing a couple people who got individual wins, like Juan Medina, for example, it kind of shows that they're getting better and better, and they're finding ways to really improve. And I think Medina is a definite example. So when I saw him compete at the University of Idaho Invitational early in the outdoor season, about a month and a half ago, he definitely has some points of really producing really good numbers, and I saw in my eyes that I think he'll probably get better as the season progresses. Like, he's definitely done that.
Yeah, and I like Stuffle as well, just because the fact that he's responding well after his injury kind of took him out of commission for a little while. It's great to see that rebound well. I know he was highly recruited from a number of schools, including Ole Miss, I believe, was one of them. So that it's good to see him hitting his stride this late in the season, especially before the postseason as well. Good to see that from the team just as a whole, and especially you know we've seen a number of Vandals kind of have their names in the news over and over again. Colsey Bates, Ben Aisuata, Kinsey Gomez, Zion Stuffle. I think those guys in particular will anchor the program for the next several years as a whole. I know Aisuata is leaving, Kinsey Gomez is leaving, but Bates will be there next year, and then Stuffle looks like he will lead the pack heading into the next several years. So it's kind of a good transition period for the Vandals, and a chance for the seniors to leave one last mark on the conference before their collegiate careers end.
Yeah, I think they're just getting better as the meet progresses. And right now, for those who have already qualified, I think they're kind of finding ways to get better and better and utilizing their training opportunities to perform at their absolute best. And for a couple of them, save the best for last when you consider Aisuata and Kinsey Gomez.
Yeah. Now, if we shift our attention real quick to men's tennis, the team traveled down to Boise to take part in kind of a little bit of a doubleheader. They'd face Idaho State in the last conference match of the season, and then they would face Boise State. And they fell to in-state rival Boise State 4-0. Idaho head coach Abid Abar said, quote, "I was happy with the way the guys fought tonight. Despite the loss, I think we played them very tough. Boise State is a good team. I think we are still peaking at the right time." End quote. They won the doubles point by getting the 2 wins on the top 2 courts. Play on the number 3 doubles court was left unfinished. And then on the singles court, Lewis Roskilly gave Boise State its first singles win with a 6-3, 6-2 victory over Lucas Contino on the number 6 court. And then the Broncos also got wins from Thomas Tenrero and Brian Foley on the top 2 courts to clinch the match. And then on the middle courts, Jackson Varney, Mark Kovacs, and Artem Vashinishkikov. Each one had a set on their respective courts, but they just couldn't come away with the victories. Akbar also said, quote, "If we play like we did tonight in the Big Sky Championship, I think we'll be in a good spot." End quote. Now, they're taking part in action today right now. That should be wrapping up relatively soon. It started at 9 a.m. against Idaho State. We'll let you know how that goes. It's kind of a huge match as far as seeding for the Big Sky Conference postseason tournament. I believe the men's team has already clinched a spot in the tournament. They just don't know quite where the seeding is going to be. And I believe, if we talked about this before, that there was 3 teams all battling for a top spot in the 1 or 2 seed. And so a victory today would be huge if especially Weber State were to lose their matchup today as well. So we will definitely keep you updated on that and as far as that is going. And then for the final 6 or 7 minutes of our program, we're going to discuss the Idaho soccer team and their game today against North Idaho College. Obviously, it's a community college, so you're not going to see some of the strong play of Division I opponents, but I think it'll be a good match for the Vandals as their first, I believe, spring home game of the season. That'll be at Guy Wicks Field. And so looking at this team, obviously they're playing a little thin with their roster right now, but they are trying to get everyone some time on the field. Are there any players in particular that you're looking at that you're hoping will make a mark in today's matchup? I know, Coach Pittman has talked about Kelly Dopke being huge for the team, Alexis Slazarek as well. Amanda Portner is not playing right now. She was the Big Sky goalkeeper of the year. She's dealing with some injuries to her leg, and so we have some backup goalkeepers in there. Terrell Stewart. Who are you looking at as far as making an impact in today's matchup?
For this kind of game, I will look into obviously Kelly Dobke and also like Terrell Stewart. I would think those are the two that I would definitely be keeping an eye on. But I think I think those are the two that I would be keeping an eye on. I'm trying to think of a couple others, but I think right now those are the two I'd be curious, especially with the goalie system that we really have not talked all that much about Amanda Portner being out for spring and pretty much at this point in an unknown amount of time. But I think also the goalie scheme of the game, I think that one will be the one thing I would definitely keep an eye on for sure.
Okay. Now, I want to see. I know they returned their entire starting lineup, but I do kind of want to see some of the key substitutes for the team, and then also some play from some folks like Megan Gu. Alexis Slozrak obviously is going to be essentially the leader of the team next year, but we've seen strong play from her and from Kavita Baton, so we know they're good in the conference. I kind of want to see some of these backups and how well they perform during a game-like situation here in the spring, but also Kelly Dobke looks like she will be a huge part of the program for the years to come. She was a freshman. She's rounding out her freshman season, so next year she'll be a sophomore, and I think the fact that to play some high-quality opponents in the fall, in the Big Sky Conference, going unbeaten, 9-0-1 in the Big Sky, and then to come just short of the postseason title has to be fire for not only her but for the entire team as well.
It's got to be fuel for fire for them to get back to the Big Sky tournament and actually pull it off and win the championship. I think that will really help them be not only regular season but also the tournament champions. That will give them a spot in the NCAA tournament, because it seems like when it comes to Big Sky, you pretty much have to win the championship to get a tournament bid, no matter how well you were in the regular season. So it's kind of how the system works. So they really want to get to that tournament and experience how it is and how competitive it can be outside. And I know the Big Sky, it's truly competitive, and I think anything can happen next season. But the fact that you almost retain everyone, and then also the additional freshman class that are coming in, who knows what will happen.
Exactly. So that game will be today at 1 p.m. at Guy Wicks Field. Weather's looking pretty cloudy outside, so we'll have to see how that goes as far as game time, if that's going to make the ball and the field a little bit more slippery and difficult to deal with. But they will be facing North Idaho College, kind of a regional matchup, a good indicator of the Vandals team. And then next weekend they will travel to Tri-Cities, Washington for a doubleheader. They'll be facing Eastern Oregon at 12:30 p.m. and then they'll face Central Washington at 3 p.m. That'll be next weekend for any Vandal fans in the Tri-Cities area. Be sure to check them out. Should be some good soccer matchups. But that's about all the time that we have for our program today. We'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to Fourth and Downtown. Be sure to check out all of our content on our various social media sites. On Twitter, we are at Vandal Nation. We post the latest tweets, news, updates, anything related to Vandal sports. We also have a Facebook page, Vandal Nation, so be sure to check that out. And then we do have an Instagram page, The Vandal Nation. You can see the latest photography assignments that our photogs have taken and some of the work that they have produced. And then also, we are on Snapchat at The Vandal Nation as well. You can get some unique looks and insights into Vandal sports as a whole and get some exclusive access as far as practices and interviews are concerned. So be sure to check all those out. And last but not least, if you are on the Moscow campus, be sure to grab a copy of the Argonauts from a newsstand close by. We post a lot of our content in there, so you can read up on some of our athletes on campus, and then as well as some of the latest news regarding Vandal sports in general. So thank you guys for tuning in. We will be back next Friday at 3:30, and then again next Sunday as well at from 11 to 12. So be sure to tune in then, and we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. This has been 4th and Downtown. I'm Josh Grissom. Have a good day, Vandal fans.